what do you got all over your face? Dumpy, Dumpy, Dumpy.
Hey guys, Constance here from Cosmopolitan Cornbread. So I am out here in the garden. I have been out here working almost all day long, prepping beds. So I've got this bed completely prepped. I had come through and I had put in compost. I'd aerated like with my big broad fork, but there was a lot of clumps on top. There was still a lot of weeds. And so I came through, I weeded, I have one of those kind of gopher tools, and I broke up all of the big clumps here on the surface, well, most of them, I missed a couple, and just generally prepped. I have this first long bed completely finished. I have this one here, about a third, almost a half done. This one's ready. I didn't fully go for it, but because I've got a few more clumps in here, but it's looking a lot better. It's almost ready. Real quick, let me show you my Egyptian walking onions. So I planted these last year. This is the first time I've ever grown them, and I've talked about them a little bit. They are a perennial onion. And they don't get really, big heads or anything like that. But I'll show you what they do. So at the tops, they get these heads. And in these heads, multiple little baby onions start to grow. And you can see right here where they kind of have popped open. And there's several inside there. And what happens is these get heavy, they fall to the ground, and then they start another cluster of onions right where they hit the ground. So they're perennial onions. Now you can use the stems here, or the stalks, or whatever you call these things, the green parts, just like you would scallions. And then the onion itself is sort of a mild flavor, kind of like a shallot. And I've actually not harvested any of these yet. This is my first time, as I said, growing them. And so I've been letting these get established. And as you can see, I've got all sorts of heads here. So they will be multiplying, and I will be able to harvest these soon. Right down there, I've got coreopsis that's coming back. That's a perennial flower. And there's really nothing much else growing in this bed other than down there. My comfrey is coming up nice and thick again. But right down here, oh my goodness, this is my yarrow that I planted last year. I had 2 little yarrow plants, and I had someone tell me, well, I had a couple of people tell me that yarrow can become invasive, and they are not kidding. My goodness. This is just, it's tons and tons and tons of yarrow plants all over the place. So I'm going to actually have to pull some of these out, maybe throw some in some pots. But yarrow is a beautiful flower, but it's also medicinal, although it is toxic to goats and donkeys. So I can't, pull out my extra and give it to them. They cannot have that. Look at all these. My goodness. So I've got a couple more Egyptian walking onions right here. This is my stone crop flowers that are coming back. A bunch of weeds. Now from here on down, I have not worked on this bed yet. I was working on it today, but I've still got a lot to do, as you can see. More comfrey. This walkway, I'm going to kind of rework this year and get it a little bit more nice looking. Right here I've got one of my perennial flowers coming back. I think that is my Shasta daisies, but I don't remember. I'll have to look at my chart and see what I planted right there. And then here I've got another little cluster of Egyptian walking onions. And I've got some onions down here, but to be honest, I don't think those are Egyptian walking onions. I don't remember planting. I think these are actually onions that I planted last year and didn't harvest. Like normal Spanish onions or yellow onions or whatever. Sure enough, because those are Egyptian walking onions. Those are not. Huh. Right down here on the very end, this is my little lilac that I planted last year. You can see it's getting buds, getting ready to flower. I absolutely love lilac. So there's still a lot of work to do. I've still got most of this bed to finish. I've got all of that bed to do. And then I've got my little bed over there that I've grown zucchini in the past 2 years. Oh, and I did have a couple other things coming up in this bed. Let me show you. Right there, I've got some chamomile that is coming back. Very, very, very excited to see that. There's a couple of them here and there. And then remember when I said I was never going to plant okra again because we just don't eat it enough, but there would probably always be okra in my garden? Yeah. Those are okra. They're all over the place. Now the zucchini did really, really well here. However, last year I had my very first incident of squash vine borers, just squash murdering pests. And so I am not going to be planting squash here again this year. And I'm actually not going to be keeping this bed as it is at all. I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to convert this spot into another raised bed. I don't know if it's going to be one like this or if it's just going to be a wood frame one. I haven't decided, but this will become another raised bed out here. And then today I tarped off this area. Now this was that big area that I had bean trellises and all sorts of stuff in. That was the fall garden, and all of those beautiful bean plants were coming up, and then a rabbit got in here and ate them all. So I have actually shifted this entire thing over this way a little bit because this spot over here is going to be my new compost area. We've got Miss Sophie right over there, and her barn is right there. I clean that out every day, and every day when I'm scooping out that donkey poop, I'm like, this is gold. This is gold for my garden. And I'm going to build my new compost area right here. So every day when I scoop it out of there, I can walk right over here, and it'll be right in the garden area where I need it. Now, I've had 2 compost areas, and they have turned into disasters, but I have an idea. So I will explain it when I build that, why the other 2 areas didn't work out and why I think this new one might. Now these 2 raised beds here, this one I've had tomatoes in 2 years in a row. That one I've had peppers in 2 years in a row. I'm not going to plant those things in them this year. I may still do peppers, but I might do them in this bed instead of that bed. And I might put some tomatoes in that bed instead of this bed. We'll just have to see. I may put the zucchini over there. I don't know. I'm starting to work out my plan of what I'm going to plant where. I'm starting to sketch it into my head. So very exciting. My tomato plants are doing amazing. They're doing really well. They're huge. I moved them out into a cold frame about a week and a half ago. I have a video where I show how I do my cold frame, and I will put a link down below or up here in a card if you're watching that on YouTube, so you can check that out. So we are currently about 3 weeks away from planting. Now I am in northern Alabama, which is Garden Zone 7B, and I want to I want to kind of straighten out a misconception that a lot of people have if they're new to gardening. When they hear garden zones, a lot of people think that determines when you plant things. What garden zone you're in has nothing to do with when you plant. The only thing a garden zone determines is whether or not what you plant that is a perennial can survive your winters. It's based upon your lowest typical temperatures for where you live. Here I am in northern Alabama, again, garden zone 7B, but there's people up north in like Washington State who are also garden zone 7B, and clearly we have completely different climates, but our low temperatures are the same. So that is what determines your perennials, what can survive and come back where you live. To determine when you plant, you need to take your zip code and you need to go to a resource, and there's many different websites that have this out there. I'll put a link down below to a couple of them. Punch in your zip code and that will give you your freeze dates. Your freeze dates are what you're going to go by to determine when you want to plant, whether it is counting back to determine when you want to start your seeds or when you can get things in the ground. So where I'm at here in Morgan County, northern Alabama, our typical last freeze is around April 18th. Now, when we start getting close to that date, I'll start really watching the weather and seeing what our lows are and make sure that we're looking good. Sometimes I'll push it back a little bit. Sometimes you get those late freezes unexpectedly and you find yourself scrambling to cover everything up and hoping they don't die, like pepper plants, which really don't like cold. And I actually have not even started my pepper plants yet. I'm going to be starting those this week because, again, they don't like the cold, so I've just not been in a rush to get them started. But yeah, so this is what I have been doing today. This weekend was very busy, which is why I didn't have a Monday video up this week. This past weekend was Passover, and I celebrate Passover. I have for several years. And this weekend I was actually invited to go to a friend's house. She is the lady who I got my original 3 goats from, and she had given me the goats because they were starting to raise sheep. And you guys, they just had babies. So I got a little bitty video clip of a couple of her little lambs, and I will put that at the very end of this video. But I have been filming. I have a lot of stuff filmed, so there's still going to be probably 3, maybe 4 videos up this week, even though I didn't post one on Monday. I did one where I made a brisket recipe, and I made something called matzah bark, which is also sometimes called matzah crack because you just cannot stop eating it. It's so delicious. And then I made some meringue cookies, chocolate chip meringue cookies, and I filmed all of those. And so those will all be videos coming up. But yes, been out here working hard today, and right now I'm going to go in the house and I'm going to make Mongolian beef. It's a super easy recipe. It takes about half an hour or so for supper tonight after I take a shower because I am filthy. So thanks for joining me out here in the garden area. I'm looking forward to spending a lot of time out here. I will talk to y'all next time. And here's that beautiful lamb footage.
I know it's nothing new, but it's so good to see you. We do this every day, and I'm still so amazed by you. So hold me tight through the night. It's just us two.